Good morning. I'm Laird Borrelli-Persson, the archive editor at Vogue Runway, with a very special guest here this morning. Over to you.
My name is Preeti Gopinath. I am the director of the MFA Textiles program in the School of Fashion at Parsons at the New School in New York. And it's lovely to be here. Yeah.
And can you tell us, give us I know what you do is varied and multi-layered, but some of the red threads that are running throughout your projects now.
Yes, so this is a program we launched recently in 2018 at Parsons. So it's brand new. And the idea was to literally change the world through textiles. Textiles are ubiquitous in all our lives, whether we're talking about the carpet we're walking on or we don't talk about it, or wipe our face with a face cloth or wear clothes or it's in our luggage. We're able to influence how people consume material by playing with textiles. And at the moment, we're all concerned about issues around climate change, sustainability, the big S word, right? And there's a lot of greenwashing going on about it because it's now become a marketing word more than a real heavy word, which is what it is. We talk about gender issues. We just use textiles as the medium to raise awareness about things in the world. And if possible, stage a sneak attack into changing the bad stuff into good. So yes. Some of the things my students are working on are developing biomaterials, talking about, the world of binary, being in a binary world. What does that mean? What are the limitations that come from that? What are the migration issues? Because a lot of students who come to Parsons are from overseas, they're international. So they all have a different issue that they want to tackle. And textiles just becomes the means through which they can say something. They develop their voice through textiles. And my job is to just draw out of them what they want to say and help them say it in the best way possible.
That's fascinating. We hear so much. I keep feeling like I'm hitting my head against the wall, not being a scientist, but again, and I was recently on a sustainability panel and was kind of schooled, but maybe it's just maybe my ignorance, but there doesn't seem to be a universal standard, at least when you get the garment, right? For example, because I'm dealing with fashion. And so you can go to a show and there'll be an organic t-shirt. Does that make a brand sustainable? And every single material that I've heard about in my non-scientific life, you'll hear organic cotton is good. Organic cotton takes water. Bamboo is good. It takes gasoline to break it down. Lyocell is good. It has microplastics, or potentially does, so it's, so then, and then at one point it felt like everyone was jumping on the recycled plastics, which is good to some extent, but I have to believe that like one fabric is not going to change the world. And It's hard to know how to think about these things.
Yes, I think it's great that you raised the question, because I think the world is grappling with it. I think students are grappling with it. And I think we're all looking for that magic silver bullet, that one answer, one size fits all, which is something humans seem to need always. One formula, one answer for everything. The issue with sustainability is we've forgotten what the word itself means, right? Sustainability consists of many, many things, and sustainable means long lasting. How long can something last? Whether it is a sustainable system or a sustainable product or a sustainable material. And they may all mean different things depending on the material you're using, depending on the end use or the function of that material. So if we think of cotton, we will say cotton or organic cotton or whatever cotton is sustainable because at the end of its life cycle, it is biodegradable. So it won't mess and sit there forever in a landfill, right? On the other hand, exactly as you said, the starting point for cotton, regardless of organic or not, you're going to be dealing with chemicals, fertilizer, huge consumption of resources, water, heat, all of this in just processing cotton to make it yarn, to make it cloth, and then to dye it further, more chemicals, more mess. Are we using natural dyes? Are all natural dyes good for the environment? No. So there's no one thing that makes cotton or organic cotton the perfect material. Yes, in terms of sustainability, if we do use organic cotton, there's less likelihood we've polluted the planet with chemicals while growing it. And two, when we put it back into the earth, when it goes to it does return to dust, right? On the other hand, so in terms of a sustainable system, that's a good way of saying our planet will last or survive or sustain longer because we're messing it up a little less. If we look at synthetics or a polyester or a lyocell, what we're looking at is something that will last forever. It's plastic, right? So the thing with a polyester or a nylon or an acrylic is that it is sustainable in terms of duration of longevity. It can last forever. Now that is the problem with polyester or nylon or synthetics, because when you're done, and the fashion cycle, you know better than most, is quicker than 6 months now. It's quicker than 3 months. Every 6 weeks, there's a new fashion cycle, right, in operation. So every time that happens, we're discarding the last season. If that last season was synthetic, made from synthetics, where is that material going? Into a landfill. So it's going into a landfill too quickly. It was built to last. It was built to last forever. You are not supposed to throw it out, because if you throw it out, it's like a plastic bag. And that's, you and I will be dead and gone, our grandkids will be dead and gone, but that t-shirt will remain in the landfill. And so in that context of discarding and disposal, it's not a sustainable system, and therefore not a sustainable material. So although we're talking about the same word, sustainable, it's in various contexts. So that's why that word doesn't fit for one size fits all. And it's being used as a marketing tool because it just makes you feel, in terms of your conscience, really good about yourself.
Yes, I've been to a lecture, and that was the most in Sweden, actually. And basically the lecturer was saying, we talk about sustainability in ways that make us feel comfortable with our choice. So we won't eat meat, but we'll eat fish and pretend that there's no effect on the environment. But, again, starting from a point of, not an expertise, but it seems to me, I kind of keep coming back to the idea of sustainability being about people, because there's been so much focus on materials, and I kind of feel like there'll be lots of new materials, but again, there's not one material that can save us, and everything, as in life, has pluses and minuses, but especially with textiles. And when you're thinking of, the most exquisite, velvets made underground in Italy, you know what I mean? Or, beautiful paisley shawls or something, that's handwork. So it starts from the seed, but you can, we all have pictures in our head of someone sitting at a loom. So it seems to me textiles are very close to the hand and to people, and that maybe if the cycle of their making also pays attention to the people making them, maybe that's a kind of sustainability and circularity too. But I'd love your opinion on that.
That's an excellent point, and that's something it's close to my heart. So the program that I've created here at Parsons is literally sits at the intersection of craft meeting technology. So we are talking about the handmade, whether it's hand woven. My students sit there in the class and are spinning yarn from fiber. They will start hitting that wheel and saying, this thing doesn't like me, because it takes a while to get into the rhythm. But by the end of it, once you get the hang of it, it is the most meditative, calming, centering thing you can do. And at the end of it, you are making thread. So basic to our human existence in an environment where we clothe ourselves, we shelter ourselves using materials, right? So yes, crafts are being lost at the altar of technological advancement, right? And if we look at the entire technology boom and the Industrial Revolution, it began in textiles. It began where fiber needed to be spun, cleaned, and made into yarn, and then cloth made in a power loom. So all of these technological advancements started there. So that is, again, part of our little ambush idea here in the program, to use textiles, bring back craft, allow for the value of cloth and cloth making by the people who make it to come to the fore. What we have lost is not just the craft to industrialization, we've also lost techniques, which are technologies.
Yes.
Right. And we've lost design. We've lost creativity from the artisan. So craft in this part of the world, in the West, is valued. And because it involves a lot of labor, it's very expensive. Right. And that's why we rely on mass production of cloth to make it the cheapest way so that more people can use it. There's a democratization with mass production. In the East, though, and I originally come from India, in India, for instance, craft was part of the manufacturing industry. When there are craftspeople producing huge quantities of block printed fabric, that was part of our manufacturing system. So it was never seen as extra special, to the extent we valued that labor much less. Right. So now what has happened is we have this weird confluence of the West extracting those resources, because you can still get block printed fabric cheaply compared to if it was made here. And so that tug of war is happening in terms of huge quantities being sold here, but are we losing out the value of the craft then? So it is important to sustain the craft, again, not for just the craft sustaining sake or preservation sake, but to see what role it can play in this 21st century with the technologies available. Can they both feed each other to each other's benefit? And I think what has gotten lost over the last 20, 30, 50 years has been our consultation with the artisan or craftsman who's producing in terms of design. So it's come to the stage where they don't even get to create design or originate new ideas. They do what they're told or asked for. We want this. And we have designers from the West going to all these craftspeople saying, can you do this? And they will say, yes, we can. And they want the sale, they want the deal, they'll make it. Why not tap into their creativity? They've got years and decades and generations of thinking about it and making. That is what I would love to sustain. That's what needs sustaining. So the conversation has to shift to drawing out the it's uncomfortable for them too right now. If you say, what do you think? Well, I don't know, you tell me, I'll make it, right? So we are now at that weird point where they're also comfortable with just producing what we tell them to. And I think we should slowly start, re-energizing that craft sector, valuing that labor, but also valuing the creativity, not just the hands that make it.
And
as you, go ahead.
How do you tell your instruct your students to open such conversations?
Yeah, so one of the big things we have, one of the courses we have is an industry partnership project. So in our 1 year, we worked with a 100-year-old Indian hand rug making company. 4 students went to India, worked with the craftspeople. They came back and said, we are not valuing the artisan. There is no better understanding than when you're there and you realize, as a student, you have so much more power than that craftsperson who's actually brilliant, producing this with incredible skill. They almost felt imposter syndrome, right? Because they were going to tell them what we needed to produce for this project. So it was a beautiful understanding and coming together. We also teach within the program the history of textiles, anthropology of textiles. I teach a philosophy of textiles course. So I think of, we talk about, let's say, Emerson's essay on self-reliance or Thoreau's essay on civil disobedience, and then related to what Gandhi did with Khadi in India. So it's just raising the awareness, talk about it, speak about it, and instead of giving lip service to ideas of, decolonizing or decarbonizing, just speak to what is and what has been from the awareness of thinking, idealism, values, and principles, instead of just serving the machine or serving, the paymaster, whatever that is. You want a job, get out and get it, and you do whatever they ask you. I've done that. I hated it by the end. And I think that is part of the reason why we started this program. And the other thing that we're definitely doing is I have students who have gone on to graduate and set up companies where they're producing material using the waste from shellfish, so from the restaurant business. And this graduate now has a fantastic company called Tomtex. She won the Biodesign Challenge Judges Award. So was a CFDA award winner. I have another student currently working on developing bioplastic using agar, but she is not using any dyes. And they change color depending on sunlight or daylight or fluorescent light because she's using bioluminescence in them.
Wow.
So it's stunning material. It's game changing for the fashion world because the material will biodegrade. You are not polluting during the process of making. That's sustainable in terms of both the system as well as in terms of the throwing away. So we talk about circular systems, we actually have questions. I am the 3-year-old in the class always saying, why? And after their first semester, they cannot use plastic without a really, really good reason. So it's just having conversations. And I think if that's the level of awareness of, people going out into the world, they are the next consumers as well as makers.
I did have a question regarding technical fabrics rather than technology and fabrics, because I'm old enough to remember, Y2K in the early 2000s when there was this idea that tech fabrics, it ended up being mostly like, scuba fabric made into a dress, and which I don't know, but especially with the pandemic, I interviewed a woman in Denmark that makes germ or virus resistant gloves, but I'm wondering why, we live in a technological age, and maybe I'm just not aware of, but it's outside from active sports with like sweat wicking or something. I haven't really heard or seen advertised very much, sort of performance fabrics that can actually work with us. I've seen students try to make things that move, but not the technology in the actual cloth.
Yes.
And I'm wondering, is there a future for that?
Absolutely. I think what needs to happen is we need to establish channels of translation from an academic setting into the marketplace, right? And that pipeline does not exist yet. We have organizations like CFDA working with students, recognizing the talent, because when they submit, they win. This year, a student actually who won the Jeffrey Bean Award was from our program, and she basically takes garbage bags and she spins them into yarn. She's hacked a piece of equipment to actually spin it into yarn, very, very fine. You can do embroidery with it. You can knit with it, you can do crochet with it. So it's in a way at our educational space level speculative, right? We can give you proof of concept, but then we need that next stage. We'll need funders, we will need people who recognize the value of it and can then translate it into a commercial space. I think designers, even when they've been couture designers, I'm thinking back, I saw a documentary on Halston, the movie. Every, creative person at the design level, at the highest design level, needs funding. In the arts, there's usually the most successful artists have a patron, at least initially. So we need to establish systems of patronage for the arts. I guess in the old world, I know in India, the Mughal Empire, there were some kings who were great patrons of the arts and would have ateliers, and you were guaranteed at least a living wage, if not a bit more, respect from the courts, right? So that's gone. So now it's all about applying for grants and writing for funding and hoping, the Gates Foundation will look at you, or, somebody who's got that level of money willing to invest in what we would consider R&D, not just the glamour of it being fashion. This feed of creativity is something that the world needs, and I'm really seeing it as a potential for a renaissance post the plague, right? So Renaissance 2.0
Yes.
post COVID-19.
Yes.
I would love to see that happen. I would love to see, work like this not just dismissed as a kid doing something in the classroom, but seen as valuable to the planet and to humanity.
Do you think there's a certain amount of sexism with regards to fashion and textiles? Because even though many people of all genders work in it, fashion has, and men used to dress even more than women a long time ago. But I sometimes feel like there still is this idea that fashion and textiles, with part of that, is sort of frivolous and changing, and that for so long has been, those have been considered attributes, not positive ones necessarily, of feminine energy. And I wonder if this is in my head, or it's something that sort of exists.
It does exist. If textiles especially, I mean, fashion still has the veneer of having men in it doing these, standing out and having a voice and then showing the textiles. But fashion is rarely seen as a place of textiles. Fashion is seen as a glamorous space of drama and, excitement and glamour, which is why we have thousands of students going through the fashion schools of the world. Not as many know to even apply to textiles, right? Textiles per se has been always diminished, if I may say, as women's work, because who considers crochet something spectacular to go on a fashion runway? Who does, right? Crochet, immediately grandma made me a crochet blanket. I have doilies at home, right? So just by nature, it becomes reduced or diminished as women's work, and therefore for the homes. It's all, textile courses are often taught in schools, or used to be in my day, which is dating me for sure, as home economics, right?
Yeah.
Or, you become the good girl who'll be a suitable bride who knows how to do needlepoint. Or, the word spinster comes from women spinning at home and paying a tax. The families would have women spinning at home, which is what the British extracted from the American Northeast homes, right?
Wow.
Girls spinning yarn at home. They obviously had to be unmarried to still be at home. They had the time, and that's why the term unmarried girl goes to spinster, right? Or gets the term spinster. So it is diminished when women do it.
Interesting.
When men do it, they are craftsmen.
Interesting. Yeah, I have so many thoughts these days. I mean, maybe not thoughts. I have so many questions that can't be answered, and sort of fragments of ideas. But I'm very interested of late in when the Met did their show on time. The way that the garments were mounted was like more like objects. They weren't made to look like they were being worn, like styled in a period. And having worked at a museum, I'm sort of interested in this idea of clothing as an object, but textile, of course, is a big, like, why is the design of a chair considered and valued so much differently than the design of a dress? Do you know, why is wood and nail so different than thread and cloth? And I guess the easy answer that most people might give is that because it's close to your body. But, to see a pattern piece is, in paper or whatever, it's not so so different. But we don't think of clothing, I think, as an object somehow. It doesn't have an object life like a vase. Like, I think my vases actually have personalities. I don't think that they're alive, but they have some animation, you know. But I wonder if that would also help with sustainability if we appreciated garments or, you know, pieces of cloth as a design separate, you know what I mean, like as
A value.
product design or something.
Yeah, it's interesting you talk about construction of the garment. In textiles, when we weave cloth or when we knit cloth, we call it fabric construction, right? That's a super intricate skill set. It requires a mathematical brain as well as an artistic brain. It's math. You are counting threads to figure out which ones go up and which ones go down to get you that perfect diagonal line in your jeans, right? Those are not looked at all. That is construction at the basic yarn interacting with yarn level, right? And then we embellish it. Then we put it together so that somebody in fashion wants to use it to put another construction together. So the number of people involved in constructing, even within the cloth industry, is phenomenal. And it's the skill that has always been undervalued. When it was made by hand, and this is post-industrial revolution, when it was made by hand, nobody owned more than 2 sets of garments. Right? Because cloth took so much time to make.
Yes, and all those Renaissance portraits, they're all dressed to the nines. It's not even, I mean, it's the cloth that they're showing off, because that was money to have a brocade. I mean, that, yes, it was fashioned into a dress, but it was the cloth. I mean, you could, because they would be undone, the designs, and the cloth would be reused. So that was money.
Even Marie Antoinette wore the most beautiful translucent white fabrics that were hand woven in Dhaka, in Bangladesh, today's Bangladesh. They were called Dhakai muslins. Those Dhakai muslins were considered like dew, you know, like they were gossamer, and you could take a whole fabric and pass it through a ring. That was how delicate this cloth was. And so you know, we see it in paintings of the time, but people wearing these translucent white cotton cloth, that was the idea of muslin. Can you imagine? And the weavers who produced it, their thumbs were cut off because it was competition. Looms were destroyed. And that skill was at one point completely lost. And now I know there are organizations trying to revive that quality of spinning, that particular quality of cotton that was grown there. All of it got destroyed. So that power loom textiles could flourish. You know, so there's a lot that we need to probably, this is why I said we need to refer to the history, understand that there were beautiful technologies that existed that were simple, but perhaps modern day knowledge and science can also feed to revive and bring them up for the current times, not necessarily do it the hard way.
Right. I mean, I feel, because I deal with history a lot, but I feel that we're in an interesting time, sort of an echo chamber between past and future, because so many old things are new again. I mean, from silly things like board games and puzzles selling out during the pandemic, you know, to the idea that made to order, which was something, you know, department stores in New York had, you know, 20s, 30s, you know, probably through the early 60s, is now a kind of sustainable niche way of producing. You know, I propose this and I make it for you without it being couture. But I also see that because of my age, that some things that are familiar to me are absolutely new discoveries to colleagues of mine. And so I can literally see the same thing existing as part of history, but also being discovered for the first time. So just the beginning of someone's history with it. And I mean, in my line of work, it's about, or what I believe is hopefully we can learn from the past and draw parts of it forward and take hopefully the good parts with us. So it's not just a discussion among, craftsperson and designer, young and old. It's actually a conversation between what has been and what can be, which is abstract, but it is actually, I actually believe that it does exist, that there is some sort of, I know it sounds crazy, but there must be. We keep coming around to these. I think it's somehow basic human needs. I think of it as like a need that needs to be filled, and sometimes we fill it with something new, or sometimes we remember something, or something is brought to our attention, and it's that thing that we need again, but just sort of the 2.0 or the 3.0.
That's right. You're absolutely right. I think the haptic quality of making, touching, being in contact and in connection with came to the fore, right? That need for it and the craving for it became important. I found a lot of students actually said, thank goodness we had this during the pandemic, because they were able to touch, make, be creative when, they had no access to machines. All equipment was no longer accessible when the city shut down in New York. So there were students out on the street collecting trash and making tapestry looms from shoes, from chairs, and making just stunning textiles with it.
Yeah.
So creativity blossoms. I had a teacher who used to say, necessity is the mother of all invention. And it's true. They had nothing to work with. So they started looking at trash. And then how do you find beauty in the things that people have thrown away? Someone's trash, my treasure, right? So they built things. And then the engagement of just presence, being present to material, and allowing the material to also inform what it's going to be is one of the mottos of my program. So it is come with an idea, come with preparation, come with skill, but then be ready for the material and the tools to tell you, I don't want to do that, right? Don't force yourself onto the material beyond what it's able to take. So don't take a stiff material and keep asking it to drape, right? It's telling you, I like being stiff. I like to lie like this. Don't force it to drape. Figure out now how your non-drapeable material can serve what you were trying to do. So that's where new innovation happens. And then you might have a tool, another tool that is a technologically, 21st century tool that can now participate. So that's the extra that the 21st century should bring in. Tools, technology, materials. So when our students work with that 100-year-old rug company, they designed textiles that had lighting circuits embedded in a hand-woven carpet, so that as you walk, it would light your way on that carpet. It was proof of concept, but think of it on an airplane, right? When everything's dark and you have to walk to the restroom in the dark on a long haul flight, or in your own home, walking to the restroom, right? At night, you don't have to turn any lights on, it lights up as you go. So it's as simple as introducing modern day technology, simple LED lights with a circuit in there woven in that now can play a role, right? You can think about so many medical devices that require textiles, from valves to skin grafts. They're using stem cells to grow bones around scaffolding. All of this is involving textiles. So we can also bring the humanity into technological spaces, that hand, that craft, and allow the technology stuff, the AI world, to inform textile making as well. So you are preserving and conserving, but you're allowing it to also evolve and humanize craft and, technologically influence craft as well, and vice versa. to the technology. I think we are craving that humanity. We want it back. And touch, smell, involving other senses in textiles. I have a student who develops textiles that actually have fragrances based on memory and nostalgia. So you experience, imagine walking to a spa or a hotel lobby, and you have these beautiful fragrant fabrics that just look gorgeous. She embroiders it all. They're stunning fabrics. You don't realize, then you walk into a room and it has a smell that gives you a particular feeling. So that power of a smell to control how you feel is also in the hands of a designer. Yeah, so there's so much that can be done with this. Like I said, it's just about blowing up the world enough to see there are so many possibilities. And there are young people working with this level of idealism and creativity at play.
Well, I mean, you are an eye opener in helping people see this. So thank you for the good work that you're doing.
Oh, this is my passion and joy. Thank you.